This is the main entrance, or one of the main entrances, to a neighborhood in an area of Tampa, Florida, called New Tampa. This is the entrance to the Tampa Palms neighborhood. By all accounts, a very beautiful area, an area that I know very well. As a resident of the New Tampa area myself for many years, I literally lived several hundred yards down the road from the entrance to the neighborhood that you see here. It is a neighborhood that is now garnering some much unwanted national media attention because of the memorial that you see in front of one of the neighborhood entrances due to the murders of these two beautiful children, 13-year-old Bo Schenecker and his 16-year-old sister, Calix, who have now unfortunately become the subject of this makeshift memorial, killed allegedly at the hands of their own mother, this woman, 50-year-old Julie Schenecker. Reprehensible, to say the least. 13-year-old Bo allegedly shot in the head on his way to soccer practice for being mouthy. Upon returning home with the body of her son in the van, she went upstairs and murdered her 16-year-old daughter, Calix, in the same fashion for the same reason. Now in the hands of the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Department, she will hopefully be facing a capital murder charge, as there is much evidence that this was premeditated. Yet the media still focuses on the fact they lived in a gated community, in a beautiful upscale home. How could this happen, according to Nancy Grace, in this beautiful 3,500 square foot home? Folks, if you take your personal defense seriously, you, like I do, understand that evil resides among us, and that no gate can shield us from real life, no matter where that gate is. We'll talk about it next on the American Trigger Sports Network.
Hi, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing great, James. How you doing this afternoon?
You know, that clip is just absolutely appalling. It's shocking that a mother would have done this. I mean, this is going to be one of those stories that is earth-shattering. I mean, I know there's people all over the country who are just shocked by what you have just shown us. It's
reprehensible. It's, you know, the murder of two kids is bad enough, James, but by their mother, the one, you know, the woman that they trust more than anybody else in the world is just, it defies all human logic. It's very difficult to wrap your hands and your head around to understand this type of stuff.
So tell me why they seem to be centering this around the fact that she lives in a gated community and she's beautiful people. I mean, this sounds like they're building a defense. I mean, what's going on with that?
You know, I saw the media story come out about this, and this story hit a little bit home for me, James, because as you saw in the video, I mentioned that I lived right down the street. I literally lived right down the street from these folks. I mean, within, I don't know, as the crow flies, a couple hundred, maybe 300-400 yards down the road from these people. So, you know, this story hit very close to home for me, and as such, I felt that I had to kind of take it and run with it just a little bit. What I mean by that is I was appalled when I saw the media coverage of this, and having lived in that neighborhood down the road, and I see the media coverage here, James, and I see CNN. Nancy Grace was covering this, and I'm watching her. I don't know why I was watching her, but I was. And I hear her saying things like, can we pan back a little bit and get that helicopter shot of the home? Look at this beautiful 3,500 square foot home. Look, there's a pool there. It's exclusive in an upscale neighborhood behind these gates. How can this possibly happen? Yeah, and I got to thinking, are you kidding me? Where is there an income level here where evil stops when people make a certain amount of money or live in a home that's valued at so much that evil stops? See, people like me understand, James, that evil lives among us, and no gate can shield us from that. So it's very disturbing. But it was People magazine did the same thing. They were quoting one of the woman's friends and neighbors who was recounting a story that the woman had told her about an altercation she had with her daughter, the 16-year-old Calix there that you saw, that she wound up shooting in the face twice because she was mouthy, about how they had gotten into an argument over a pair of shorts. A typical teenage girl and mom argument. Those are too short. You're taking them back. Why don't you just wish you could wear them? That type of thing. And people then, at the end of the story, focused on how she stomped off through the 3,500 square foot home. And I got to thinking, why does any of this matter? So if anybody has any suggestions, feel free to call me. I'd love to know.
Yeah, you know, the first thing I would think of, actually, because we're in the industry ourselves, is it that they were afraid to go forward with the story, that they're shifting it a little bit because that's the only place they can go?
Well, you know, David Codrea was a guest on the national radio program last week, James, and we talked about this a little bit, and he made a very telling statement, and I'll repeat it here for American Trigger Sports viewers. And he says, you know, the reason they cover this stuff, he says, you know, Nancy, and the reason they're concerned about the price of the home, how this even makes it in the story. Nancy Grace probably goes home to a pretty nice house. The person who writes for People probably doesn't live on that side of the tracks. That person probably that reports on this for Fox 13 News down in Tampa Bay probably doesn't live over on that side of the tracks.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is, it gets back to how can this happen?
I understand that. I understand that, but you know, we're talking about professional media people here.
Right.
You know, if that were to enter into the direction of their story, that would be appalling. I mean, professional media people, and the ones that you're referring to are, they wouldn't do that for that reason. I mean, there's got to be something else to this besides. I understand David's point of view on that. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I understand the point of view there, a petty jealousy kind of, that's beyond us. I mean, you and I are there. You know, we just wouldn't do it that way. I mean, there's no story in that direction. The story is why, who, things like that. And the fact that they went off in that other direction tells me that there's something else. It's not I just don't believe it's a petty little thing. I think there's some other reason there, Mark, and maybe in the coming weeks we'll find out what that is. But these are professional media people. I just can't believe that they would lower themselves, or that the people that they work for
it's shocking. There's no question about it. I think out of probably 11 to 12 stories I saw about this, or read or watched about this, and went out of my way to do this because we did cover it on, at least to a certain extent, on the radio program, I think about 2/3 had something to do with the fact that she drove a Mercedes, or she lived behind a gate. And my personal opinion of that is that people have this idea that this can't happen where I live. How can this happen where I live? People put themselves in that perspective, James, where, you know, I live here, I live in a nice neighborhood. This doesn't happen to me. I mean, these are good people, like you said at the beginning. You know, these are the beautiful people. How does a crime like this happen? How does a mother get to the point that she shoots and kills, let alone even thinks about it? And there's evidence here that this was premeditated, because she had a 3-day wait in Florida. See, if you're in Florida and you try to purchase a gun and you don't have a Florida concealed weapons permit, there's a 3-day wait. That was ineffective. There's another underlying story here as well, too. It could have been a 10-day wait, because there were writings that she then put this off the 3 or 4 days necessary to commit the crime. There was nothing going to stop her, and we simply don't know the answers to that yet. I'm sure we'll get to the bottom of it at some point, but the media coverage has been very disturbing about this.
No, it's the wrong direction for media to go in. I can tell you right now, Mark, if you were sent down there to cover that story, if David Codrea was sent down there to cover that story, we would not be looking at those issues. The issues we would be looking at would be the issues that pertain to the reason why she did it. We may be looking into the fact that, did she have a registered gun, an unregistered gun? Those kinds of things may be of interest to us. But the fact that you're pointing out that she lives in a gated community and she and drives a Mercedes, what's the gain there? There's nothing.
Absolutely no idea. Those are great questions to ask. I really don't think we'll ever get the answers to that, James, quite honestly, because it's coming from there's some type of phenomena here. We saw this in People magazine. We saw it on local coverage, ABC, NBC, CBS, and the local Bay News 9 down there, which is a CNN affiliate. I noticed the same thing on the Fox, national Fox News coverage, the CNN coverage, MSNBC coverage. Just about every story I saw had something to say about that. You know, I was talking with a good friend of mine, John Vrabeck, who happens to live about 2 miles, 3 miles up the road from the neighborhood that you saw in the video, and he and I discussed the same thing and really couldn't come to terms other than maybe the psychological phenomena, the defense mechanism that we don't want to believe that something so horrible can happen where we live. I don't think any of us want to believe that that can happen. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's a psychological defense mechanism. I have no idea. But to see it stretched across 5, 6, 7, 8 different networks and magazines and news stories is really kind of disturbing. It was very telling. I have no idea that we'll ever get to the bottom of it, quite frankly.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I agree with you. But there's some other reason there, Mark. There has to be another reason.
Yeah, I mean, there has to be. I agree with you 100%.
Journalists will not go in that direction unless they're digging for something and trying to draw some sort of parallels to it. I mean, we can go back years and years to where I can't remember the name of the 2 individuals now, or Hernandez something, the Hernandez brothers, executed.
Right up in Northern California, sure.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you can go back years and see that. Any person with any kind of logic whatsoever knows that crime has really nothing to do with where you live, how much money you have, how little money you have. It has to do with other reasons.
One would think so. One would hope so. One would hope that we don't, because what we do when we're talking about personal defense, and we talk about this on Armed American Radio on a regular basis, as you well know, the preparation, avoidance, and awareness. You can't let yourself fall into a complacency trap. You have to realize. And see, there are a lot of people viewing right now who think, wow, that's a nice area of town. And it is. By all accounts, it's a beautiful area of town. I can attest to that. As I said, I lived in that area for a number of years. But there are a lot of residents up there who might like to know about the carjacking that occurred at the public shopping center right down the road from the gated community that you saw a number of years ago at 2:30 in the afternoon on a Wednesday. The car later being found up 5 miles up Interstate 75, having been used in an armed robbery later in the day. Or the Ruby Tuesdays restaurant right down the road from the gated community that you saw on the video that was robbed at gunpoint on a Sunday as the employees were getting ready to open the store. This stuff happens anywhere and everywhere.
Right.
And we have to remind ourselves. Interestingly, in this case of Julie Schenecker, her husband was on deployment. He's a member of CENTCOM, based out of MacDill Air Force Base down in Tampa, and he was on deployment in the Middle East country of Qatar. So, imagine getting that phone call and having to come back.